Imagine a town completely empty, not destroyed by war, not abandoned slowly over time, but left behind all at once. Dinner plates still resting on wooden tables, food untouched, clothes hanging quietly inside closets, as if their owners planned to return the next day. Tools dropped mid-task, frozen in the middle of work that was never finished. This is not a movie set. This was a real place. Portlock, Alaska. For decades, Portlock was a small but thriving fishing town on the edge of the Alaskan wilderness. Salmon canneries operated day and night. Timber was pulled from the surrounding forests. Families believed they had carved out a future in one of the harshest environments on Earth. Life was difficult, but it was stable. Until 1949. That year, everything changed. In a single wave of fear, the entire town fled. Not because of a storm, not because of famine, not because of war. They left because they believed they were being hunted, not by wolves, not by bears, but by something that walked on two legs. Something powerful, something the native tribes had warned about for centuries. Tonight, we open the case file of one of America's most disturbing mass abandonments. Welcome to the nightmare of Portlock. To understand why an entire town vanished, we have to look beyond official records and missing persons reports. We have to understand what people believed lived in the forests surrounding this bay. In 1973, long after Portlock had become a ghost town, 3 experienced hunters, Ed, Dennis, and Joe, set up camp near Dogfish Bay. These were not inexperienced men. They knew Alaska's wilderness. They knew bears, wolves, and violent weather. Fear was not new to them. That night, a powerful storm rolled in, trapping them inside their tent. Rain hammered the ground. Wind bent trees until they groaned under pressure. Around 2 in the morning, Ed suddenly woke up. He noticed Dennis was already awake, sitting perfectly still in the darkness. Dennis slowly raised a finger to his lips. Something was outside. The footsteps were heavy and slow, striking the ground with a deep, rhythmic sound. This was not a 4-legged animal. Branches snapped far above the ground, higher than any bear could reach. With every step, the earth seemed to vibrate slightly beneath them. Whatever it was, it circled the tent. Slowly, deliberately. Then it stopped directly in front of the entrance. The men listened to deep, guttural breathing just inches away from the thin fabric. They waited for the zipper to move. It never did. When morning came, they saw the tracks. Massive, human-shaped footprints pressed deep into the mud. There were no claw marks. No bear signs. They packed up and left immediately. They understood they had been warned. The people who lived in Portlock decades earlier were not so lucky. Long before American settlers arrived, the Sudpiaq people avoided this bay completely. They believed the land itself was cursed. They spoke of a creature called Nantiinaq. The name meant the stealer. It was described as half man and half beast, covered in dark hair and standing more than 9 feet tall. A creature that watched from the forest and took people who wandered too far. In 1786, British explorer Captain Nathaniel Portlock anchored here. He saw opportunity, fish, timber, and profit. Almost immediately, his crew began to suffer strange effects. Crushing dread, confusion, nausea. Many reported a heavy pressure in their chest whenever they entered the forest, as if the land itself rejected them. Modern researchers suggest this may have been caused by infrasound, low-frequency vibrations known to induce fear and panic. Spanish explorers reported similar experiences. They fled the area, later calling it demon-haunted land. But warnings were ignored. By the early 1900s, a cannery was built. Families arrived. Portlock began to grow. And then, people started disappearing. At first, it was subtle. A logger would head into the woods and never return. The excuses were familiar. Lost to the cold, killed by a bear, until the bodies appeared. In the 1920s, a corpse washed up in the lagoon. It had not drowned. It showed no signs of animal attack. The coroner stated the body had been torn apart with a level of force far beyond human capability. Fear spread quickly. Workers refused to travel alone. Dark shapes were reported watching from the ridgelines above the town. At night, screams echoed from deep within the forest. These were not human screams. In 1931, the violence escalated. A logger named Andrew Camluck went out to check equipment. He never returned. When his body was found, his skull had been crushed in a single blow. Nearby lay a massive iron logging machine, bent, twisted, as if it had been used as a weapon. 4 men could barely lift that machine. In the mud beside the body were 18-inch footprints shaped like a human's. This was no longer an accident. It was a message. By the 1940s, life in Portlock had become unbearable. No one went outside after dark. Footsteps were heard circling houses late at night. Families reported the feeling of being watched through their windows. Fear became a permanent resident. In 1949, Portlock collapsed. In a single day, families packed what they could carry and boarded boats, abandoning their homes, school, and post office. There was no official evacuation order. Only panic. 1 man stayed behind, the town's postman. He lasted less than a year. In 1950, he fled as well, later claiming a devil walked the shoreline at night, watching him from the darkness. Portlock was finished. But the story does not end with abandoned buildings and rotting wood. Years later, fishermen passing near the bay reported strange sightings. Tall, dark figures standing motionless at the edge of the trees. Silhouettes watching from the shoreline as boats moved through the fog. Some heard heavy footsteps echoing across the rocks at night. Others described deep, inhuman sounds carried by the wind, sounds that tightened the chest and triggered an instinct to leave immediately. Pilots flying overhead reported an overwhelming sense of dread when passing above the forest. A feeling of being watched from below, even from the air. Search teams who briefly explored the ruins described the same sensation. Oppressive silence. No birds. No animal sounds. Just the wind, and the feeling that something was wrong. Alaska has no shortage of wilderness, yet Portlock remains untouched. No attempts to rebuild. No permanent settlement. It is as if the land itself refuses to be reclaimed. Skeptics argue the stories are exaggerations caused by isolation and fear. They say bears and accidents explain everything. But bears do not crush skulls in a single blow. They do not bend iron machinery. And they do not leave footprints shaped like a man. The Sugpiaq people never returned to this bay. Their warnings remain unchanged. Some places are taken. Some places are claimed. And those who ignore the signs pay the price. Portlock is quiet now. But it is not empty. Because whatever once walked those forests did not need the town to survive. It was there long before the first building was raised. And it will be there long after the last one collapses. So if you ever find yourself standing on the shores of Portlock, listening to the wind move through the trees, remember this. The town didn't disappear. It escaped. And sometimes, in the silence of Alaska's wilderness, something is still listening for footsteps that don't belong.